In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this really easy to make wooden bench. Hey everyone, it's David here from David's DIY Reviews. On this channel we do a lot of DIY tool tutorials, tool reviews, and little DIY woodworking builds like this. Quick little, half hour, 15-minute builds. They're really great, and you're going to love this one. Let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark and cut the 3 slats for the seat top of my bench. They're going to be 3 feet long. And I'm using actually spruce 4x4s that have been ripped into pieces that are 3/4 of an inch thick. And you can use anything between maybe a 1/2 inch and 1 inch for the seat top. It's going to work for you. You can use any material as well. And the width of mine is 3.5 inches. You could go probably 3 to 4 inches. All that's going to change is the gap between the slats on your seat back. You can kind of play with those dimensions or with the material that you have to make it work, the way that you want it to look. So I'm going to go ahead and mark 4 of these and cut them. So I'll go ahead and cut those, actually I said 3 before, but 4 seat slats. So now I'm going to mark and cut the pieces that go around the bottom of the bench top, the skirt or whatever you might want to call it. The short side is going to be 11.5 inches and the longer side is going to be 28 inches. Now all these dimensions, you can definitely change them based on maybe material that you might have or the size of the bench that you want to do, but if you do it exactly like this, it's going to work out. So I'll go ahead and cut those out now. So now you're going to have your 4 slats cut out. You're going to have 2 of the longer pieces of the box of the skirt, 2 of the shorter ones, which, if you picture this bench upside down, these are going to be the box underneath. And then the next thing to do is going to be to cut the legs, which are just solid 4x4s that are going to stand in the corners, like if this bench was, like I said, upside down. So I'm going to go ahead and mark, if my pencil was right around, my legs at 19 inches. Now you can make your legs, whatever length you want, based on how tall you want your bench to be, but 19 inches plus the thickness of the bench top, it's going to give you a pretty nice height. Now what you want to do too with your combination square, if you have one, they're handy to mark around a 4x4 like this, is you just line it up, you mark it all the way around, so that way when you cut with your saw, assuming you're doing it by hand, that you can follow that line all the way along as you cut through. And like I said, you can use any material for the legs. You can use really whatever you want. I'm going to use these 4x4s because the 4x4s are what I used. I ripped them to make all the other pieces. So whatever works for you, whatever you got, I'm going to go ahead and cut these now. And admittedly, try not to do it cross-handed. Admittedly, cutting these legs with a handsaw is probably the most difficult part. But I mean, there's only 4 of them. You take your time, do a good job, it'll be great. So at this point, you should have your 4 legs, your 4 bench tops, the 4 pieces of skirt. And what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and give all the edges a quick little sand. It's going to take a bit of time, but it's going to be a lot easier to sand up all your edges now, just with some coarse sandpaper, than it is to kind of get into all those grooves after you've assembled it. So we'll go ahead and sand all this up, and then we'll move on to assembly. And hey, if you get value out of this video, definitely think about subscribing for a lot more really great content just like this. Now let's get back into it and assemble this bench. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to build the box that sits under the seat and get your legs set in the corners. And to do that, I'm actually just going to take one leg, lay the short piece of the skirt on top like this, and nail through and get 2 sets of these set up, turn them on their side, and put the long lengths on. Now I'm going to use 3¼ inch nails to drive through here to get a lot of good strength into that 4x4. So a nice thing to think about, you're going to want to set your nails in a position that once these 2 nails are in, that you have space to put nails in from this side for the other piece that's going to run that way. So we'll go ahead and put a couple nails kind of top and bottom-ish. and that's gonna leave us room for the other ones. Make sure it's nice and square. I mean, it is a rustic bench, so if it's not perfect, that kind of goes with the theme, but if it's not square, it's not gonna sit right. So remember when you're nailing this up that the top here is really important to be flush, because the bench top is gonna sit right on there. And then you also want this to be nice and flush as well with that edge of the 4x4 for the other portion of the runner of the bench top to sit across the side like that. So we'll go ahead, we'll nail up 2 of these, and then we'll put the sides on. 1 more nail here, and then we'll move on. Could definitely use some work on my nailing skills, but it's rustic, so you know, kind of works out. So now that you've got the 2 shorter pieces nailed onto your legs, you've got 2 sets of those, you can stand those up, and we'll go ahead and nail on the longer section of the box. So just really line it up nice like this. Make sure, once again, the top is really flush here so that the seat top will fit on really nice. And we'll go ahead and we'll nail that up. Also make sure your legs are relatively square. You can kind of tweak it around at the end to get everything squared up with the bench top as you nail it down. You know, if it kind of turns a little bit as you're nailing in, that's great. I always find you get your first nail in and set. If it pivots a little on you, you can straighten it up as you do the second nail. So like I said, it's kind of turned on me a little bit there. So you just straighten it up. Get your other nail set. Straighten it up exactly how you want it. Give it 1 good hit and it's going to hold it. Go ahead and nail it up. And you've probably noticed I'm not being particularly super careful with, you know, the spacing of my nails from either side or up or down, or even missing as I'm hammering. Because like I say, I'm kind of building a rustic piece, and you know, that kind of stuff, it doesn't look too bad when it's not quite perfect, especially if it's an outdoor bench or a garden bench. But you know, all these dimensions and whatnot, you can apply these to like a modern contemporary bench, or you know, any type of bench you want to do. You know, the neater and finer you want to tighten up your dimensions and your assembly, the nicer it's going to look to suit, you know, whatever purpose you're doing. So I'm just getting my last nail in here, and then we'll move on to the bench top. Now, if this was going to be a bench that you were going to use a lot, you could probably definitely put a couple supports down here, or you know, or across here, or on an angle, whatever suits you look. But this is going to be more of a decorative bench for me, like a garden bench kind of. So I'm just going to go ahead now and we'll put the bench top on. And like I said, if your bench at this point has a little bit of a wobble, as we nail on the top, we can kind of tweak it, you know, push it in certain directions. And as you nail it up, it's going to stiffen it up and it's going to stay nice and square and nice and flat. So to get your bench centered, to get the slat centered, I'm just going to go ahead and mark center, and then I'll start out from there when I nail on the bench top. So the width of mine is 12 3/4, so half of that is going to be 6 3/8. So if we mark that here, that'll be our starting point. When we start to nail on the bench top, we'll just kind of lay those where we want them, and then kind of eyeball the other 2 and get them laid out just as we want. So I'm just going to lay these on here and kind of get them set exactly how I want them to sit. The width that I've made mine is going to make them pretty tight. You don't want this outside one to overhang too much. You want it to have a lot of stability there. So we'll just kind of lay them on exactly how we want. If you happen to have made your bench top stick out a lot longer, you might want to measure this gap so that it's the same on both ends. But for this one, you can kind of eyeball it, get them laid out, and then we'll nail in a couple, and then we'll go from there. So I've got one set on here exactly where I want it now. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of tack it in place with these 1.5 inch nails. And that's going to hold it until I can really drive in those 3 1/4 inch nails. It's going to sturdy it right up. So I'll put one of those at each end of all the boards, just to get it, like I said, held in place. And we'll just do that for the rest of the 3. And if you notice as well, the way that I set up these dimensions, we're able to nail down into the top of the 4x4 that's the leg, and that's going to make this really sturdy. You might also notice that my boards are a little twisted, a little warped, they're not perfect. But like I say, that's the look I'm going for. You know, this is like definitely like a rustic looking piece, but like I said before, you can use perfect straight, you know, D4S, and make this a nice looking straight square cut, a modern piece as well. All these dimensions in this build process would apply. So now that you've got your 4 boards, the bench top set across, we're going to take these bigger 3 1/4 inch nails again and drive them down into the top of the 4x4. And we'll just do that all the way around. And then after that, we'll probably drive some more 1.5 inch nails into the skirt here that's underneath, because you don't really want to drive a thick nail into that. You'll probably split it. So we'll put some smaller nails here and at the other end as well to hold these nice and square and straight. So I think I'll go ahead and put those last couple 1.5 inch nails right here down into the box of the bench, and that'll hold it nice and square. Do that at both ends. And then I think I might even do a nail down through here into the middle of this portion of the skirt. You'll just have to kind of try to, you know, find the right spot to nail it through and set one of those. And there you go, guys. You've got yourself a nice looking rustic bench. I mean, it's straight, it's sturdy, it's square. You could throw this in your garden. You could put it in the front of your house. You could even use this indoor if you want. It's a pretty nice piece. It's easy to make. When you're done, you could always sand the top, smoothing it off a little bit. You probably want to sand it if you're going to be sitting on it a lot, but if it's just for decoration, I really like the look of the roughness of it. It really suits, you know, a lot of situations really well. So this was kind of a really fun one. I'm really liking these little benches. You know, you can make them any dimensions. You can make them taller, longer, wider, whatever you want. And also, all the dimensions and some instructions will be in the description below. And you know, if this is the kind of thing you're into, check out this playlist I've got. There's a lot of really neat DIY woodworking builds. A lot of other little projects I've done in the past. There's a lot of great stuff in there. Check it out. You're probably gonna want to build some of them. There's some really neat stuff in there. And like always, guys, David's DIY Reviews, new videos every Mondays, every Wednesdays. Check me out. See you in the next video.